We're going to stick on the fantasy theme and we're going to go to Mackenzie Flohr, who is the author of The Rite of Wands.
Hello. So my name is Mackenzie Flohr. I am the author of the award-winning The Rite of Wands, which is a fantasy. It's a YA fantasy. It's about a 12-year-old boy by the name of Myrta McKinnon, who is a warlock, though he has not gained his powers. So what he does is he goes through a Rite of Wands ceremony, which is a little bit like Christmas Carol. So you'll see a glimpse of his past, his present, and his future. In his future, you see his doomsday prophecy, and so he becomes rather obsessed, and he's going to change that destiny. So in a way, I have this little joke. I say that if Harry Potter and Doctor Who had a love child, you would have the Rite of Wands. And I am going to start it off here with a little trailer so that for those who are visual like me, so you'll be able to see that. So I'm going to share my screen here.
If anything you must understand, it is this. If I do not find a cure, my life is forfeit.
Myrta McKinnon, rise. It is your time to participate in the Rite of Wands, in which your soul shall face the ultimate analysis. Do you accede?
Yes. This can't be the way things end.
Heed my advice, young warlock. The future you saw is only a possibility. You will be given the ability to change it.
How?
I suggest you start by studying your father's potion books.
Lachlan Estrella has come to my Verna. I must focus solely on my work. I am afraid. I do not want to fail.
So for those who have to see it, you can see it has a little bit of a, with our time, kind of a little thing about like COVID-19, what we're dealing with, where the main character sees this doomsday prophecy where everyone's going to die to a disease called the Shreya. There's no cure, there is no treatment, and people are dying. And Myrta is tasked with changing the future and finding that cure. So really the purpose of the whole series, I feel, which is going to end up being 7 books, there are 2 books currently out, is that it is designed to help you find hope. The main character, Myrta, goes through a ton of suffering. So if you may be yourself, a friend, know a family member who has lost somebody to COVID-19, you can look to Myrta. He will help you through it. He will help you find hope. And this is a series that I started back in 2017. So really, I had no idea that we were going to have this pandemic that would be eerily so similar in symptoms and the way that things are with the Rite of Wands. This actual last couple of months, I decided to do something outside the box and become a screenwriter. So I have now adapted the Rite of Wands to now be a TV series, which I'm hoping to get some representation, if not this year, go into next year, so that maybe the next, I don't know, Game of Thrones or something like that. So this is the very first book in the series. It also has its own language, though it's not as complex as the last author there. It is all based on the Spanish language. So it has, if you're familiar with Spanish, you would be able to read it and understand it. And then there is Orland, who is a soothsayer. He, you could say, is a dual main character, where he is Scottish. So I took a lot of inspiration from Transporting. He actually used a lot of the same type of dialect. So anything Orland says, it's written out phonetically. So you can really hear his accent, and that it looks on the page kind of odd at first. And some people have said that it's a little bit difficult for them to read it, but then once I have a little guide in the front so that you can see it and understand how it all works. So I have the map design. I don't know how well this is coming through on the screen. That's the map. Then we have, here we got the language, some of the spells that are in here. And then Orland's, a brief guide on Orland's language, which is right there. And then there's the second book here, which is the Rite of Abnegation. In this book, it's kind of like a bridge book. So it means that the Rite of Wands has in the middle of the book, there's a part where it goes 20 years and the reader's like, what the heck just happened? Why did it jump 20 years? Well, at the time when I wrote it, I didn't think it was important. But I got to the second book and my main character said, there was something really important that happened back then and everybody needs to know about it because it's actually quite significant. So a lot of people have asked me as an author, would I have changed the way that I wrote the Rite of Wands from the first book to the second book? And at that time I said, no. Now though, if you ask me that question after writing the screenplay, absolutely yes, I would have changed quite a bit of things simply because the world has, as my publisher would say, gone Game of Thrones, where it takes place in the 12th century. It's a version of Ireland, so it has some, if you're at all familiar with Irish history or Celtic in general, you might see some of the similarities that happened between it. When I wrote the very first book, I actually did not know anything about Ireland or its history, but by coincidence, or maybe fate, if you want to call it, there are a lot of coincidences between in my series and actually in real history that someone said to me, Mackenzie, may want to get hypnotized. I mean, I think you might have an ancestor who's trying to tell you something. I don't know. So for things that I have done for the series as where I found the inspiration, it's kind of odd. Where I came up with the idea is I was literally going to, and this was back in 2002, I was on my way to Indiana to a convention to see the Lord of the Rings. They actually had some costumes that were going on there. And I passed by the sign. I couldn't tell you what it said. I don't remember it, but it was enough that I saw the sign and it just went, and suddenly it was like I got zapped literally by a wand. And it said, this is your story. Now you got to write it. And this is actually the same wand that is on the cover of the Rite of Wands. And this particular version of it is crafted by the people who actually did the wands for Harry Potter and is signed by actor Matt Smith from my adaptation. I've rewrote it as from the adult version of Myrta versus the child, so that there would be a little bit more of a perspective of an elaboration of the series.
Mackenzie, this is so fun. I love that you have a wand. I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I bet there are a couple, and there is one in the chat box. DeAndrea, if you want to ask it, go for it.
Hi, Mackenzie. I was just wondering, since you just mentioned that you would change it at this point, would you ever consider doing a second edition? And if so, could that newer version be a part of a special edition box set?
You know what? I'm actually thinking about that right now because the third book is not going to be out for at least another 2 years or so due to the way that traditional publishing is. I am actually thinking a lot of pulling the two books and actually reimposing some of the ideas that came from the screenplay. One of those specifically is I wanted to expand on the relationship between Myrta and his father, which is, it's in the book, but it's not really, you don't really have, one of the ways I guess you could say with Myrta is he's not one of these characters that you necessarily will like him. He comes across as very abrupt, very brash, very much like in your face type of thing. So he's not necessarily a likable character, but yet at the same time, he seems to be, a lot of my readers tend to really like him and end up finding that they can relate in some way to him despite him having that little bit of an attitude, to put it nightly.
Any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat box, or you can wave your hand. We'll call on you. Mackenzie, how can we find you?
you can find me at MackenzieFlohr.com. I'm at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much every place that you can get a book at, I'm there. Also, I have a website that's all dedicated to the Rite of Wands, which is called riteofwands.com. There will also be a version of, I'm planning on uploading my pitch deck for the screenplay so that those who may know somebody who is a producer, or maybe you just want to know how to do something yourself, you have an example of what it looks like.
There is a question from Elizabeth. How did you find your publisher?
Well, that was kind of an ironic thing. I actually went through Comic-Con. I was at Wizard World Chicago. It was actually the same place as where I got my connection with Matt Smith. And there was a representation or an author from the publisher that was actually in Artist Alley. And I talked with her for a bit, and she really liked the story of the wand and ended up telling the publisher, and the publisher goes, maybe could you like tell her to send the manuscript to us so we can have a look at it? This is actually something that's never done before. We never had an author actually like literally craft a wand. And I crafted the wand just because I wanted something that I could have for myself, not necessarily something that I would sell or anything like that. And it ends up, and now I just have it as a display on the table, and it seems to really draw people's attention there. So that is how I found them. It's bhdpress.com. So you can, if you're looking to find a traditional publisher and potentially send your series or book to them, you can definitely do that. They have their information on their website and how you can do that.
Good question.
Yeah, very good one.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Mackenzie. This was so fun. I met you at a conference, I think it was the Rochester Writers Conference, like years ago.
Yeah, actually, and I was teaching how to do audiobooks, so that was the reason I was there. Was that at that time nobody knew how to take their book and make it audio, and I did with mine. It's kind of like an audio drama. So based on that, if you're like, what the heck is an audiobook versus an audio drama? An audio drama is you have the sound effects, you might have characters that are somebody who's doing multiple voices, which was what my narrator does. He does all the different voices, and then I do the sound effects. So it feels more like you're kind of listening to something like from Big Finish, which is what I wanted it to sound like, was that same style from Doctor Who.
So cool. Well, I'm so glad you're able to join us today. Thank you so much. Check out her information in the chat box.